Okay, good evening, councillors, council officers, gallery and our friends online, and welcome to our November ordinary meeting. We'll open the meeting by mentioning the prayer and acknowledgement of country. All standing, please. I would like to pay my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We are thankful for this day and pray for guidance to fulfil our duties. May we be challenged to give our best always. Amen. Please be seated.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'd like to move that we suspend standing orders so that we can have the people online address us. Is that correct? Oh, and move to point 9.9?
Yes, we can do that. Shall we
bring that forward?
Yes, we'll just deal with the apologies first, so we note the apologies for this presentation, and then I'll come straight back to you. So we have an apology from Councillor Haywood. If I could have a mover. Thank you, Councillor Elstone and Councillor Cooper. All in favour? Thank you. Any disclosures of interest? Microphone, Councillor.
I have lodged a non-pecuniary disclosure of interest in, non-pecuniary, I've lost the words. Potential, yes, I've lodged the appropriate form to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 911, as I'm a board member on the Wentworth District Community Medical Centre.
Thanks, Councillor.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've declared a pecuniary interest in 9.11 also, as I sit on the coordinator for an event that's applied for funding. I've also listed a non-pecuniary conflict of interest for item 9.3, as I have association with 3 of the nominees.
Thanks, Councillor Rodder. Those disclosures of interest are noted. Councillor McAllister, with your assistance.
I'll try again, shall I?
Thank you.
I would like to move that we progress directly to item 9.9, the presentation of annual financial statements, and suspend standing orders to hear from the auditors in relation to that matter.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Rodder, all in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now deal with item 9.9, the presentation of annual financial statements. And we welcome our auditors who are attending the meeting online.
Thank you, and good evening to the Mayor and to the councillors. My name is Manuel Moncada. I'm the Director of Financial Audit and Delegate of the Auditor General of New South Wales, responsible for forming the audit opinion on Council's 30 June 2023 general purpose financial statements. The audit, as you may be aware, was completed by Nexia under a contract arrangement with the Audit Office, and joining me on the call is the partner from Mr. Brett Hanger. I am pleased to report to Council that following the completion of the audit and my oversight review, I was able to issue an unmodified opinion on the 30th of October of this year. Unmodified opinion, or also a clean opinion on Council's financial statements. This pleasingly met the statutory reporting deadline of 31 October as set by the Office of Local Government. I'll ask Brett to speak to the report on the conduct of audit, but before I do want to just acknowledge Council's finance team and thank them for the cooperation afforded to the audit team. Thank you.
Thanks, Manuel. And good evening, Mayor and Councillors. So I'll just add a little bit about the conduct of the audit report. It includes a number of key financial performance indicators. And we note that Council met or exceeded the industry benchmarks for 4 out of the 6 indicators, with the exception of the own source operating revenue and the outstanding rates percentage not meeting the industry benchmark. In respect to the own source operating revenue, many country councils don't meet that benchmark, primarily because there's a lot of grant money coming around, which obviously is a good thing. So not uncommon at all. And the outstanding rates percentage wasn't met this year, but obviously is trending in the right direction. In brief, Council's financial results include the following. An operating surplus of $21.1 million compared to $11.4 million for the previous year, with the increase being primarily driven by an increase in grant income for the year. Total cash and investments were up at the end of the year to $51 million. Council's unrestricted current ratio was 3.9 to 1. And another way of expressing that is for every dollar Council owed, it had $3.90 to cover it. This exceeded the industry benchmark of 1.5. The debt service cover ratio was 12 to 1 compared to the industry benchmark of 12. And as I mentioned, the rates outstanding, it decreased marginally to 12.3% of the $11 million that was collectible. The benchmark for that one for a rural or regional council is to try and get it below 10%, but is trending in the right direction. I'll take the rest of the report and the financial statements as read, but I also would just like to thank Simon and the finance team for their cooperation throughout the audit, and we're happy to take any questions regarding the audit process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, and also acknowledge our finance team for their dedicated work. Councillors, any questions? No questions. Done well. Okay, thank you very much. We now take this to...
We can either deal with this report now or we come back to it at a later, when it gets back to 9.9 in the general agenda. So it's up to councillors what they want to do.
No worries. Thank you very much for your presentation, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay. Councillor McAllister, with your assistance, we might resume standing orders.
Oh, yes. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we resume standing orders and either return to the order of business and also that we admit something.
Late report dealing with...
Oh, yes, the late report. And also, don't we have to withdraw one as well?
I'll just note that when we get to that item.
Okay. Sorry, so we're accepting, oh yes, the late item into closed.
Thank you, councillor. So the motion is that we resume standing orders and the order of business, and that we admit late report renewal of General Manager's contract. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Rodder. Those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. We return to the confirmation of minutes, and I'll also seek some assistance for a mover to admit the extraordinary meeting minutes from 9 November 2023. Thanks, Councillor McAllister.
Yeah, I'd like to move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held 18th of October be confirmed as circulated, and also note that the minutes from the extraordinary meeting on the 9th of November also need to be confirmed as circulated.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Crisp. Open for discussion. There being no discussion, those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 6.1, outstanding matters from previous meeting. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Elstone and Councillor Beaumont. Thank you. Open for discussion. Being no, yes,
Can
councillor
I-
Beaumont.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Can I just ask, has there been a date set for the Heritage and History Advisory Committee meeting?
We are aiming for next Tuesday, the 21st. So reports have been drafted. I just need to coordinate with the executive assistants to put together agendas and send those out.
Okay, so 21st.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just wondering whether the previously moved motion with the tourism strategy should be listed on the outstanding action items report, and whether the review of the user group agreement should also be listed on there. And is it possible to get an update on both of those, please?
The Manager of Tourism and Promotion has been away for the last 4 weeks, Councillor Rodder, so prior to her going on that leave arrangement, she had sought expression of interest or quotations for the strategy, so I haven't had time to catch up with her in my absence the last 2 days and workload today, so I'll endeavour to get a more informed update for that strategy.
So there was an expression of interest put out.
She advertised it? Sorry, Councillor Rodder, I'll have to talk to Lexi and find out where exactly we're at for the...
So should that, if there has actually been an expression of interest put out, should that have not come via council before it went out?
The normal course of events would be that you ask for something to be done and we facilitate it. So whether it comes back to council or not is a non-operational matter. The operational matter is for me to deliver the outcome that you requested for in the motion.
I look forward to then being provided with a copy of the expression of interest if one has in fact gone out, to determine whether it's actually adequate to comply with the intent of the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Elstone.
Just perhaps one for Director Gunn, 10.5, Councillor Hayward's question about an update on the proposed 40k zone. The answer is Traffic New South Wales have advised the project should be completed by the end of the financial year.
Yeah, I might be able to...
What project do you do to change the speed limit?
I might be able to provide some detail on that. Local Traffic Committee meeting held yesterday and a subsequent follow-up this morning with Transport for New South Wales and New South Wales Police. Transport advised the full design for that, so the project is not only just changing speed signs, there's other traffic calming devices that go with that. So they have advised that their final design and plan showing all that will be presented to council or to engineering department to clarify our estimate of costing back through to them. The funds confirmed with at this stage a program to implement the signage update, the associated traffic calming and other items involved in the design prior to Easter. So the expectation is planning and procurement of those signs and other items happen throughout January for implementation as soon as they arrive. So I would be expecting a February, March implementation of that. High pedestrian solution for the 40k zone.
Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further questions, all those in favour that we receive and note that report? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, item 7.1, the mayoral report. I'll move that. Seeking a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Cooper. I will just mention, appreciate the invitation from the RSL to attend the Remembrance Day service in Wentworth. Also, just to follow up from our video conference meeting with Minister Jackson, we did subsequently issue an invitation to the Minister to piggyback a visit to Wentworth on her recent trip to Menindee. That was unsuccessful. However, I'll advise that I'll be attending Country Mayor's meeting next week in Sydney with the General Manager, and we hope to nonetheless submit our proposal for a proposed housing project here. So we'll try our luck in that forum. And I would also like to thank Councillor Crisp for attending the New South Wales LGA conference earlier this week, representing Council, and Councillor Crisp has a verbal report from that conference.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, fellow councillors. I'll table the program, which included the motions and the various guest speakers. The motions were extensive, and 94 of the 107 motions were dealt with on motion day, which was Monday. Also, in other general news, the result that was available on the election, which occurs biannually, is that Daria Hurley of Broken Hill has been re-elected as President of the Local Government Association New South Wales for another 2 years. There are other positions, and they'll be advised by the Electoral Commission in due course. The other areas of interest, the next conference will be in Tamworth next year. There was an extensive trade exhibition, and 2 areas that interested me amongst all of that was, and I know that that discussions also occurred with our General Manager around Charles Sturt's micro-accreditations, which is a program of learning which is, as the name is micro, and that could well offer some benefits for upskilling our current workforce. So I'll leave that in the General Manager's hands. And in a little bit of a divergence back to some of my previous life, I really liked the opportunities that biogas facilities will offer, but not for us. But if anyone's interested, I have the facilities here, which may be of some interest to the wineries. There's a real possibility, according to this U-Turn Winery Mark, to supplement their natural gas supply, if that ever into the future. However, that'll be something I'll take up elsewhere. And probably right up the top too, I thank the General Manager. He is well known and well respected, and that helped me break the ice at a place that I'd not been before. Now down to the detail. Minister Rose Jackson had to decline our offer at being Menindee because she returned from Menindee directly to the conference. And she was a part of a housing panel, and that was one of the key discussion points, was dealing with housing and the pressures on that at the conference. And I think Minister Jackson's probably message was bring solutions, and I think following our video conference with her, I think we're on the right track with our proposal for the Minister at the Country Mayor's Conference next week. The outline, I think that very much fits that. The Minister for Local Government gave a speech, mostly, again, covered the Code of Conduct, and it was a very similar speech to which the one he gave in Cobar, but he also went further this time and wants to move Code of Conduct breaches to the courts, including the disqualification from office. This provoked quite a lot of conversation over the next break amongst people about this, and the concerns that I had and were reflected by many others is how is it referred to the courts, the long delays in the court lists considering this would be a civil action, who pays, and does a council continue to sit until the matter is heard. Perhaps the key part in this for all of us is, does this need legislation? And if it does, it may be some time coming. Councillor Scott from the Australian Local Government Association just indicated there are a couple of grant programs around, disaster ready funding from the Commonwealth at 200 million and a community energy fund for 100 million, and the information on that will be out in the next month or so. But she also indicated that $750 million of federal grant schemes have been removed. So that's a change that is occurring. The other theme, apart from housing, at the conference that came through was that of financial sustainability and including infrastructure renewal. And it's the money to maintain what we have and to better what we have. And also in that, it's noted that over time, councils have changed their priorities in many cases to social environment and other health and related community issues away from infrastructure maintenance. The Parliamentary Secretary announced that there will be a review to look at some of council finances again, which I think is a kick the can down the road exercise for a while. But the one good thing out of that did come out is that to decouple the essential services levy, which has escalated at a far higher rate than the rate capping allowed, and that is something that recurred throughout that discussion, that needs to happen. And the Minister certainly indicated he thought that would be part of the review. I have done some work on that as well to further highlight that issue. So that's one that's out there to be solved. And probably, as a parent and grandparent, the demographer looked at how our society is changing, about what will happen in the various generations and some of the implications on future workforce of the various generations that are coming along and what they're likely to be. Probably the humorous but most sticking moment in mine is that they showed a little toddler sitting down with a colourful magazine, swiping and tapping, but not turning a page. I thought, and that probably summed up some of that. The Grattan Institute have also reported on local roads, and it's a very detailed report, and the bottom line out of that is that the Commonwealth need to put $1 billion a year into road maintenance and betterment of roads for the foreseeable future, and they went every way to find a way to do that for councils, and a lot of councils participated with them in the review, and they couldn't find any other way than the Commonwealth to put money in. Now that's fine. What happens with that? Watch this space. An interesting briefing on foreign interference from the Home Affairs people, and happy to talk about that with councillors if you're interested. But it was that was fascinating, as was too the breakfast presentation by the E-Safety Commissioner. It's a very interesting world out there, and it has some dangers. And finally, the ICAC presentation, and that was about grey areas, lessons and warnings, and the take-home message out of a number of examples are: choose your new friends carefully and don't squander your reputation. On that, I thank councillors for attending, and as always with these conferences, there were some very useful conversations that were had with some various people around a number of issues, notably with a number of councils along the Murray about water, which was being led currently by Edward River and buybacks. The Tamworth Council, who too had an interest in water and a great deal of water that's going down the Peel River, and they were hoping that it was getting to us. And of course, kind regards from our neighbours at Cobar, Burke, Balranald and Central Darling. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crisp, for your comprehensive verbal report. Is there any discussion? Councillor Elstone.
I haven't got any discussion about the report, and I thank Councillor Crisp. I think in 7 years of sitting here, it's probably the most comprehensive report I've heard the day after you returned, at least anyway. So, thank you very much. I just had a question around your meeting in Broken Hill with the Federal Water Minister and what you got out of it and what you thought of it.
Well, I thought it was well worth going to put out from our perspective that we want the lower Darling flows to be prioritised, but not prematurely releasing excess water from Menindee Lakes. And I was joined on that trip by Councillor McAllister. We didn't get into the topic of buybacks because it was really focused around the rules governing what happens in the lake system. So we probably didn't get a lot in the way of feedback other than sort of, I guess, the idea that a lot of the management there is being reviewed and that the Minister took on board our concerns, which were shared by Broken Hill councillors and Central Darling. We touched on the Wilcannia Weir and some potential solutions there for carp management, but that was more taken up by Central Darling naturally. So, Councillor McAllister, is there anything you'd like to add to that response?
The Minister also brought up the point about the impost on fisheries staff in particular, staff in general, in dealing with emergency incidents like the mass fish kills. So I was able to hand her a copy of the newspaper article about the motion that came out in this chamber, and it sounded very much like there's a sensitivity at that highest federal level in terms of the impact on the little guy in, you know, little places like here and Menindee, but also an understanding of the level of knowledge once the name of the fisheries person who had resigned was brought up, significant interest in the amount of intimate knowledge of our rivers that's gone, perhaps for good, and also I think in mentioning that, you know, the plan doesn't pay enough attention to the river below Menindee, that everything's focused on Menindee. She also revealed an interest in reviewing the triggers and I think the intergovernmental agreement in relation to the plan. So that sounds like a massive can of worms in my mind, but I think, again, he is a minister who's looking for solutions and happy to listen to what's going on, definitely against the release of the carp herpes virus.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Any further? Councillor Rodder.
So, not on that, but would it be permissible to give a short brief on the Australian Inland Botanic Gardens AGM being on the 22nd of November, and the Wentworth Regional Tourism AGM being on the 4th of December, and a visit to the Aluka community session yesterday?
Thank you.
Permissible?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
forward notice of both of those AGMs. Last night I attended a community session with Councillor Beaumont on the Euston Critical Minerals project. I did make comment to them that I thought it should have been renamed as the Baronga Critical Minerals project, because in fact it's located much closer to us than what it is to Euston, but the exploration started at the Euston end, and that's where the name was born. But very exciting development across a couple of shires, including ours, 25 kilometres from Mildura, with another project by the same company who are currently recruiting in Balranald. So just would like people to be aware of those projects.
Thank you. Thanks to all councillors who are attending various meetings representing, and again to Councillor Crisp and the GM for making the time to head to Sydney.
May I? I got one.
Yes, Councillor.
I don't think it's been mentioned in chambers before, but the Bottle Bend Reserve land manager has been nominated by Crown Lands for a Community Achievement Award, and 2 representatives from Bottle Bend Reserve and a representative from Ozfish, and staff from Crown Lands will be attending on the 25th in Sydney to hopefully bring that award home. You can vote for the most popular award, and you can vote for that every day, and a few people have been. So, yeah, look it up. Very exciting.
Thank you for that. I'll now put to the vote those in favour of accepting the Mayor and Councillor reports. That is unanimous. Thank you. Thought we were never going to get to you. Item 8, there is no reports from committees. Item 9. Yeah, okay. I was still in item 7.1, but that's all done. Item 9.1, General Manager's report. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Nichols.
On the 20th of November, the Murray-Darling meeting, is that still at Eddie Wander and 14th Street, where it used to be?
Sorry.
Council office upstairs, Madden Avenue.
In Madden Avenue now, okay, thank you.
Any discussion on item 9.1? Councillor Beaumont.
Just one query probably to the General Manager, please. Just in relation to the IPC reporting, found that whilst there's been significant improvement in council's compliance generally across the board, there's still some councillors continue to be non-compliant in relation to the Government Information Public Access Act. Are we fully compliant in that respect? Thank you.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Those in favour of accepting the report?
Yeah, put all my stuff back in the pile.
Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, item 9.2, Employee Provisions Policy Review. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Rodder, seconded Councillor Beaumont. Open for discussion. Okay, the recommendation is that Council adopt the revised Employee Provisions Policy. I'll put that. Those in favour? Yep, sure. Microphone, please.
Just in regards to the changing of the uniform and the rebranding, are we seeking and giving extra weight to local companies, or are we outsourcing that from the region?
Again, we knew of 3, if not 4, companies that could provide the whole system from branding to colour to choice to embroidery and whatever else, and there's been a company chosen to progress that for us.
Local or out of?
Councillor McAllister.
I'm just wondering what the cost implication is of this one, please. I'm noting also on page 299, costs of providing uniforms sits around about $50,000 a year. What sort of impact would this across the board change in uniforms because of rebranding have? There's no cost implications here.
I think we're still working through. Yeah, we're still working through those, pending the approval of this policy. So yeah, I'll take that on notice, Councillor McAllister, and we'll get those figures back to you. But I imagine there will be a little bit of an increase in the first year to put into place some of those figures, and then after that it'll go back to close to what it's been for the last couple of years. So that figure there is both indoor and outdoor uniforms. Yeah.
Councillor Nichols.
Yeah. People would have expected me to ask this on page 48, 4.6, leave provision, annual leave. Can we please have a detailed report of how much outstanding leave above the required time that's in that, the 8 weeks it says in here, please? Because I'm sure it's miles more than that, and what we are doing, or what the directors are doing about getting this cut down.
Yep, we'll bring that as a separate report back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillors. I'll put the question. Those in favour that council adopt the revised employee provisions policy, that is unanimous. Thank you. Item 9.3, Australia Day Awards. We are in the receipt of nominations for the following categories: Citizen of the Year, Young Citizen of the Year and Young Sportsperson of the Year. And we will now conduct a secret ballot in chambers for these nominations. And all nominees have been circulated with your meeting papers. And the results will remain confidential until announced at the official Australia Day event at the Coomiella Club. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Cooper, Councillor Beaumont.
If I may, while we're on that subject, is there an opportunity for council to maybe review the categories?
We'll take that question on notice, councillor.
Just that I know that our neighbouring council also includes events categories for Australia Day Awards. And I think there's an opportunity there that maybe hasn't been considered. And I would also like to suggest that greater onus be placed on advertising the Australia Day Awards for next year, if I may.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, I think everybody... Did you have a question, councillor Elster? So everybody's submitted their ballots? Okay, so I'll put that recommendation. Those in favour? That's also unanimous. Thank you very much. Look forward to the ceremony on the 25th of January. Item 9.4, Memorandum of Understanding, Wentworth Shire Council and Murray Regional Tourism. And I note for our audience, we had a meeting earlier this afternoon with Cameron Sutton, the CEO of Murray Regional Tourism. Could I have a mover for this? Councillor Rodder, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Open for discussion. Okay, I will put the motion that the recommendation that Council authorises the Mayor and General Manager to sign the Memorandum of Understanding between Wentworth Shire Council and the MRT Board for a period of 3 years. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor McAllister, against. Thank you. That is carried. Item 9.5. Monthly Finance Report. Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Nichols. Councillor Elstone. Open for discussion. There being none, I put the motion. Those in favour of accepting? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 9.6. The monthly in... Sorry, Councillor. Item 9.6. Monthly Investment Report. Recommendation that Council receive and note the monthly investment report. Could I have a mover? Councillor Rodder, seconded Councillor Crisp. Open for discussion. There being none, I put the motion. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9.7, September Quarterly Budget Review. There is a recommendation that Council note the 2023-2024 First Quarter Budget Review, and B, note the proposed revised 2023-24 changes to operational and capital expenditure. Could I have a mover? Councillor Rodder, Councillor Crisp. Open for discussion. Councillor Elstone.
Just a comment to you, Director of Finance. Page 123, landfill income 840, expenditure 418. So we've basically had a 400 grand profit out of in the first quarter.
That would be correct, yes.
Very encouraging.
Councillor Nichols. You did?
I had the same thing. I said a little bit higher. I said 420,000, so, which was very, very good. You're right.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? Those in favour, please. We didn't quite get the vote concluded. Councillor Beaumont.
Just in relation to page 140, the contracts entered into during the quarter. That's very good, but I'm wondering whether we could have the inclusion of the list of current and ongoing contracts, just so that we're aware of, what is actually sitting there as well, that it's not complete. And that report gives us the list of contracts that entered into during the quarter. Mm-hmm. But it would also be handy for councillors, I believe, to see what are the ongoing projects at the same point in time.
Yep. So following on from the discussions that were had at the Audit Committee about the similar topic, I actually went and refreshed my understanding of the guidelines for this. I hadn't looked at them for a period of time, and this report will actually, I think, deliver that going forwards, because all we have to, our obligations under the guidelines as set out by the OLG is that we should only be reporting those contracts that we entered into and didn't complete during the quarter. So it'll show the outstanding contracts that were entered into during that quarter. I'll have to have a think about how I can display other contracts that may have been entered into previous quarters that might still be outstanding at that particular point in time. That might end up just having to be some commentary within the actual body of the report as separate to what's in this page here. So, yeah, we'll work through that.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be very good.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll return to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 9.8, the quarterly operational plan progress report. The recommendation that council notes the report. Is there a mover? Thanks, Councillor Elstone. Seconded by Councillor Rodder. Open for discussion. There being none, those in favour? Those against? Councillor McAllister. 4. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9.9, we have heard from our auditor team this evening. Presentation of annual financial statements. Mover Councillor Cooper and Councillor Crisp. Open for discussion. Councillor Nichols.
Probably only to congratulate the staff on the financial position of council and their particularly shrewd handling of our finances.
Hear, hear.
Coming from you, Councillor Nichols, I take that as a very high compliment.
That's a pretty big rap.
And any further...
And so do my staff.
Any further compliments, praise or questions? Councillor McAllister.
Thanks. I've got a couple. Please bear with me. Page 233. I'm just noting the more than $100,000 jump in New South Wales Rural Fire Service levy. On top of what Councillor Crisp has mentioned earlier, the Emergency Services levy and the Fire and Rescue New South Wales levies, that's a considerable impost that council needs to shift onto ratepayers.
We did get funding last year to cover that, but going forwards that funding won't be ongoing. It was a one-off commitment from the state government to acknowledge some of that increased impost, but I can inform the chamber that our commitments for this year haven't gone up by as much as what it did last year. It's evened out significantly compared to previous years. We're fortunate, I suppose, compared to some other councils who have some very large. I've had stories of some increases of over $1 million in certain areas. So they are. I mean, a lot of that has to do with the way Mr. Walker at the Fire Control Centre in Dayton manages and controls the purse strings here and what he puts in for and whatnot. So we're fortunate in that regards, but also our commitments to other areas is not as significant as what some other councils are, where they're like the regional hub for some of the smaller councils. So the money that they require to operate those services are significantly more than what we require. But yeah, if that continued going upwards the way it did from last year or from the year before to last year, then yes, it's a significant impost and somewhere where we would have to reduce services in other areas to cover it.
And that's indeed a risk.
Yep.
Thank you. Page 241, I'm just noting under other debtors, legal costs, for 2022, there's a significant amount of legal costs there, and it may be that everybody else sitting in the chamber knows the answer to this, but I don't. Is this something that can be disclosed here, or should we talk about it in confidential?
Move it into confidential, but I'll need to do some research.
Okay.
It's easily explainable, but yes, there's a deed of confidentiality around it, so we probably should discuss that in closed.
All right, thank you. Bear with me, sorry, I have got a couple of the own source operating revenue that was brought up already, and the infrastructure backlog ratio that was brought up already as well, and the asset maintenance ratio was the other one that I was looking at. But yes, good job, thank you. That's it.
Thank you,
And
councillor.
I will say we did submit on the 31st of October. It was a little bit later than what we had anticipated, but we got it on time, which was a lot better than the 14th of November that it was last year. So.
Thank you. Councillor Beaumont.
Yes, page 280. There's a nature of transaction contribution to building construction, 193,000. Just wondering, that's a bit ambiguous. What might that actually be?
That was for the Menin Sheds. So we helped the Menin Sheds source funding for their new shed at Dareton. So we obviously then forwarded that funding onto them to enable them to commence works on the shed, and it's listed because one of our senior staff's father is on the Menin Sheds committee.
Thank you.
Anything further? No. Those in favour of noting the report? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9.10, data breach policy. Moved councillor
Move that with a
McAllister
question, if I may.
and councillor Crisp. Thank you. Open for discussion and a question from councillor McAllister.
Probably a few questions, actually. I've jotted notes down as I was reading, and then some of those notes have been answered by the time I got to the end of the reading. On page 326, under policy coverage, I note that it's applicable to all employees, in brackets, including councillors, contractors and volunteers. The question that I didn't get answered by the time I finished reading the policy was how and if councillors will be trained in this. It looks as though there will be clauses in contracts for contractors. Volunteers will be advised by whoever they're volunteering for, but there's nothing in here that says councillors.
We're still working through. This is the first step in a raft of updates and training and whatnot that's been rolled out to support this, similar to what happened with the Public Interest Disclosure Act upgrades as well. So when that comes to hand, we will provide that information and training to councillors in due course.
Great. Also, I'm just noting the terminology and in between the various acts, and some of them aren't listed, so I've added a few here that probably need to be, which I'm happy to hand over. But there is a term called sensitive information, which is referred to actually further, it actually says highly sensitive information, but it's actually a legal term within the legislation, which describes probably different aspects of people, and then separate to that is health information, which has to be dealt with differently because there are health privacy principles as well.
There's two acts there. There's the Privacy Act, and then there's the PIPP Act, or whatever it's called off the top of my head. So there's a number of interacting acts that we have to comply with, as well as this policy.
Indeed. So I've added the Australian Privacy Principles Guidelines, the Records Management Policy, the Code of Conduct, which both of those were listed within the report. The Australian Standard ISO, which I think is actually international standard, should better be on page 328, under 4.2, Systems and Processes for Managing a Data Breach. That ISO is actually 31000, 2018. Sorry, I'm just trying to... I couldn't find section 59.0 of the PPIP Act, so I'm hoping that you'll get back to me on that. Sensitive information, there it is listed under section 19.1 of the PPIP Act. So I've just highlighted there that that is actually terminology that you can use, which is probably better used than the subjective, however it's been described. And under roles and responsibilities, the one thing that's missing, I think, is, and it's probably missing because it either needs to be overtly stated on all the policies or just generally accepted and understood, that councillors as the governing body is ultimately responsible. And also I've asked, the final question is whether there should be annual risk management reporting, including attempts of breaches, near misses or any incident reporting that should come back to council, just so that council have eyes over how this policy is operating and what level of risk we're actually dealing with here, because I would suspect that that's a great unknown that probably should be known as soon as we can, and as this policy takes effect, we'll be able to better gauge whether we're on the right track with it as we proceed. That's everything.
Thank you. Are you suggesting you'd like to move that as an amendment with corrections as discussed?
Please, yeah, thank you.
So the seconder was Councillor Crisp. Are you happy? Thank you. Okay, so that can be followed up between yourself and the Director. Any further discussion? Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9.11, request for financial assistance. We have a recommendation there. Is there a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Elstone.
And I'll move that we support all the applications.
Thank you. And Councillor Rodder and Councillor Beaumont are going to leave, so we'll give them time to leave. Thank you. Okay, seconded by Councillor McAllister. Open for discussion. There being none, those in favour... Oh, sorry, Councillor Nichols.
Do we cover wages? I'm sorry, because Camille Wentworth Cricket Club is wages. I didn't think we did.
It's a good question for Director of Finance.
We did support this. They put the same request in last year, and we did support it. So it's a tricky one. We sort of created a bit of a precedent there.
Perhaps it pays for the other half of the mower.
Otherwise, we could rephrase it to say that we provide them with a grant to cover other operating costs.
That would be better.
Yeah.
That would be better because if somebody reads that and says that, you're going to have every sporting club in the district one.
Yes. No. Point taken. Yes.
And if I could just make the point that a riffle is very different to a rifle.
What, the rifle or the rifle?
Okay, we're going to change that wording now. So we'll just...
Please let them know as well, because we've changed the wording, so they know next year put something else in.
Oh, I did. A request to cover costs associated with curating, plus a new turf mower for the deck.
Councillor.
We've approved agreement to it. It's not part of the motion.
Is that the motion?
Yeah.
The approval of the motion. And it's 5 or 6 bills.
Yeah, it still is. Is that?
So I'll just ask the mover to amend, just to tack on to the end of the recommendation.
Yeah, if we
with
amend it
report-
to request for 2240 to recover costs associated with curating.
No, we'll just change the
And the new
recommendation.
turf mower.
Only need to change the recommendation to include with report details as amended.
Do that, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Seconder? Thanks. All in favour? Thank you, and I think we can invite our other councillors to return. Oh, now? Welcome back, Councillor Rodder and Councillor Beaumont. I'll advise that the chamber has approved all requests for financial assistance. Okay, item 9.12, I advise, has been withdrawn at the request of the landowner, so will not be dealt with this evening. Item 9.13, project and works update. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Rodder, Councillor Crisp, open for discussion. Councillor McAllister.
I just want to once again extend deep appreciation to the roads staff for the mechanical ballet that Councillor Beaumont and myself witnessed when we drove up to Broken Hill, and the joy in the community of the completion of the our section of the Pooncarie to Menindee Road. It's and having driven it with Councillor Linklater recently, no, we didn't. We went the other way. It's a beautiful piece of work, and all reports that I've seen on social media and heard from people right across the board is that they're all very happy with that, and it's certainly going to open up massive economic potential that has been denied, particularly the township of Pooncarie, but all of those station properties as well with their stays and their work and the trucks and everything. So congratulations and thank you, and please pass that on to your staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I'll be driving that road tomorrow, and I'm going to pump the tyres up to about 75 pound because apparently it's as smooth as the proverbial. Any further questions? Councillor Nichols.
The Wentworth effluent disposal system, I see we've got all the bits and pieces. Is this likely to be finished in time for the Christmas holidays?
It won't be finished in time for the Christmas holidays. We are looking at potentially to set up an alternative temporary pump out site. The work will commence next week. So, and that will also include at the end of next week with the delivery of some of the infrastructure components and the pontoon and the ramp and the like. So work will flow from with the contractor who is currently working down the end of the street and flow straight onto that project. So yes, we are looking and investigating the option to set up an alternative site until it's commissioned.
I like the invention of the word flow. Is it going to be somewhere that's fairly accessible to the same site for the use it's used for?
The site that we're looking at is, at the moment, is down at the Wentworth Wharf area.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Beaumont?
Yeah, just in relation to the Wentworth Wharf area and riverfront, it's possibly not looking its best at the moment, and I think with the Christmas holiday period coming up, I'd like to see some work in that area. There's no lights at the moment. The lighting system is not working on the wharf or on the lawn area. Sprinkler systems are not operating effectively. I think that we probably need to, not just in the Wentworth Wharf area, probably Fotherby Park and the Junction Park Reserve as well, be looking to perhaps improve those areas in preparation for Christmas, New Year holiday period. I mean, they are the window to our shire. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Beaumont. I think that's been noted. Councillor McAllister.
I just want to raise a point that Councillor Beaumont's reminded me of. I'm not sure that this council has made a policy about lighting along the riverfront, and I would suggest that that there may well be some input from fisheries, etc., on the impact of native fish in particular to continued lighting along the river, which is one reason why I've always been against too much lighting at Golgol, even though some people enjoy falling over on the way home from the pub. And I suppose I'm just curious to see what other councillors think, whether that's something that we need to discuss in terms of a policy, or if such a policy exists, or if there is something under the LEP or the planning documents that covers that, please.
Director Carlin.
Thank you. So we don't have a policy per se. That particular issue of lighting in environmentally sensitive areas is actually covered off under the Environment and Heritage documents and guidance documents, whereby you can only have passive lighting in certain environmental sensitive areas. So it's actually quite spelled out in their guidance documents, and they're called up within the SEPs and other sort of documentation. So it's not legislated, it's just best practice, but it is an environmental consideration that you do sort of look at. And that's something that was looked at as part of the Junction Island projects as well, and that was what the outcome of that was. But I can provide more information to you on that if you'd like.
I'd certainly be interested in having a look at the information required so that councillors can determine whether a policy is required. I don't know if anyone else has another opinion.
I would only question, if you can't have adequate lighting, you shouldn't have access then at night time. Who's responsible if someone goes A over T and in the drink?
Well, they would be, I would imagine, but also you don't...
Who would be?
What I've suggested is that continuous lighting, so you can have sensor lighting, which I think was what we spoke about with the James King Park development around the boat ramp in particular. So obviously around boat ramps, we would need to have some sort of level of diligence, and I would suggest that, motion sensors or solar lighting, which turn off at least at some portion of the night time, so the fishes know what cycle the moon's in and those sorts of things that impact their breeding.
Councillor Beaumont.
The other aspect too, though, in terms of lighting, is that it does deter inappropriate behaviour in those areas. We have sustained some vandalism and graffiti over recent times along the bridge and the abutments there and the wharf area. So I'd suggest that lighting has a benefit in that respect too, in that it does keep potentially some undesirable behaviour at bay.
Thanks. I don't know if I made it up, but I seem to recall a discussion around lighting maybe along the whole shared footpath from Golgol, so from James King Park up to Caramar Drive. Does that ring a bell?
That is correct, Mr Mayor. So there has previously been discussion about that. It was an inquiry that came from within the community.
I hope the fish don't mind that part of the track.
I'm pretty sure the top of Drings Hill, the fish won't not be impacted at all.
Thank you. No, that's good. I think we can progress that. I have a quick question or comment. Pink Lake will deal with that. The Baronga Shared Path is rolling out almost as quicker than you can take it in, so that's looking fantastic every time I drive past. Director Gunn, did you want to provide a quick update on the commissioning of the Golgol East Raw Water System, given this report refers to it, but I think you've got some more information?
Yes, so the Golgol East Raw Water System, down there this morning, a couple of final touches being done with regards to the electrical switchboard side of stuff. Pretty much all the infrastructure is now in place. Pumps, filters, chlorination units, all the civil infrastructure is in place. Only requirements, I think, at the moment is some outstanding scaffold that's still underneath the structure. So within the next, by the end of next week, we're hoping to have the system commissioned and hopefully operational at that stage. So certainly on track with what we had been reporting over the last couple of council meeting periods, and that project obviously will come to a close. So barring anything that's unforeseen, which it should be commissioned and tested by the end of next week.
Fantastic, thank you. Councillor Rodham?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In regards to the Baronga toilet block, I'm assuming that is the toilet block that's going to be located at the bike park down next to the river. So 2 points there. Perhaps the GM might give us an update on the Baronga Caravan Park situation, because council have been tagged in as being responsible for that not reopening, but my understanding is that it's not really anything to do with us.
I can only comment by your second statement, Councillor Rodder. I'm not aware of any involvement or engagement with council. Quite some time ago, the owners of the Baronga Caravan Park were in my office and said they had a significant amount of restoration work to be undertaken, and it was wholly within their field of moving forward.
Fantastic. That was what my understanding of the issue was also. But a while ago, council approved the funding for an additional toilet facility, public toilet facility at Baronga, which, as far as I'm aware, that project hasn't come back, and we haven't yet definitively selected a site for that. Or has that occurred, and where is that project at?
No decision's been made, Councillor Rodder. We're still waiting funding body sort of information and approval.
That's taking a little while. Hopefully that's not a bad omen, Simon.
No, it's the program of works has been lodged with the department. We're just going through discussions about certain projects. That one hasn't come up, so I'm hoping that they'll sign off on the whole $2 million or whatever it was over the next couple of weeks.
There was a number of additional projects that were also in that funding bucket. So should we cross our fingers, arms and legs?
Well, the money is definitely there. It's now just discussions with the funding body around the eligibility of the projects that we submitted, is to make sure that they do comply with the the guidelines of the funding round, and should one of the projects not meet that, well then we'll need to either massage the project or think up another project. So the full quantum of the money's been approved. It's just the projects that they're to be spent on is still being discussed.
Thank you for the update, Simon.
Thank you very much. Final note from myself. I'd like to commend the Parks and Garden team for their diligence in the Golgol area of trying to get ahead of the curve of some unsightly areas that's not really their remit, but they're sick of looking at some of these areas as much as the residents are. So I thank them for their attention to detail. I'll now put that we accept and note that report. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 10, notices of motions, questions with notice. And we can go in any order we like. Councillor Beaumont.
Okay, so a question for Director of Finance. We have a reporting process where we capture financial assistance provided to community volunteer groups, sporting clubs and sponsorships. At our October meeting, we approved substantial discounts to various sporting groups to utilise council assets on an annual, well actually I think they were a biannual lease arrangement. My question is, can we look at a way of capturing that loss of, or potential loss of income? Whilst it's not an expenditure, it's a loss of potential income through the reduced hire fees, and have that reflected in an appropriate report which may be embraced within the financial assistance report, just so that we can reflect to the community that whilst we have a budget of $200,000 a year for the financial assistance program, the actual financial assistance and support we're providing to our Wentworth Shire community is far in excess of that. So it's not about accounting for, in an accounting sense, that loss of potential income, but it's a way of, I would like to see a way of capturing, the potential full extent of financial assistance that we provide to our community. I think it could make for good news to our community to be able to say that we are, supporting community groups to the tune of whatever hundreds of thousands of dollars, and not just be limited to that $200,000 budget allocation. I mean, it could be that we're, it could be $500,000, $600,000 a year. That could be attributable to financial assistance across the board. So if I could just ask the Director of Finance, give that some consideration and perhaps let us know at a future meeting, please.
No, I think, as you and I discussed before the meeting, I think we can work through, and even just thinking then whether it's something we can tack into or add to the quarterly financial assistance report that comes to council to say that, in the last 3 months we have also provided the following additional support outside of that program or something along those lines. Yeah, I'll definitely just have a think about how we can do that. Because you do raise a very valid point.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions with notice? Councillor McAllister.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it because I'm not sure. Do all sporting facilities and council public buildings have defibrillators, and are staff and users trained, updated in their use, please?
For the use of the defibrillators?
In their use, in the use of the defibrillators.
Before the answer to the full part of that question, the modern defibrillators, you don't need any training because it actually tells you step by step what to do. with the actual device. So it has a very clear
I just
speech.
recently did some training on a new one, so yeah, it's worth doing, even though it does step you through.
I'll answer your question in two parts. All, I'm not 100% sure of. On our website, there's a section which nominates where they are in their public spaces and/or buildings, because there's a couple there's one here at the bank in the main street, and another one's going in Midway Centre or somewhere like that. Yeah, so I'll take your question on the all, but certainly the buildings that I can reflect on, although I don't think there's one in here. There's definitely one in the main office and other spaces, so I'll, obviously out of what we've just discovered, it's not in all buildings, but I'll try and elaborate on that.
And subsequent, if I may, have emergency services been advised of the location of all of council's defibrillators?
Once again, I'll take your question on notice as part of emergency operations, and there's lists of all our emergency operations centres and plant and equipment and other bits and pieces. Whether it goes down to defibrillators or not, I'll have to go back and have a fine and look at it.
Thank you. The reason I asked the question is because when I did recently do a training on the newfangled defib, which is like way different to over a decade ago when I first did defib training, the AMBO mentioned how easy it is for them to access if they know where they are, and if someone's reporting an emergency, the people on the line can very easily say, there's a defibrillator right there, go grab it or send someone to go and collect it, which is going to minimise waiting time, which could potentially save a life in an emergency situation.
We've just put up on some mapping there that's off our website.
Good, thank you. Councillor Nichols.
Beverley Street Sporting Precinct was shown when it went in, so the 3 sports down there all know how to use it. And as far as anything else they update, they pay for themselves. Things like their RSAs, the kitchen working things and all those sorts of things. So that's all paid by the clubs themselves. So, and they're getting more and more onerous. If you want to make a sandwich, you have to have a supervisor.
Councillor Rodder.
So I would just like to bring to councillors and staff's attention a very good app called Good Sam Responder, which if in the case of an emergency, the Good Sam app will actually tell you where the location of defibrillators are. It's very worthwhile downloading to your phone. It's called Good Sam Responder. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Very useful. Any further questions?
If I can,
Councillor Elstone.
Mr Mayor, the Director of Planning, the riverfront parcels, I'm getting a hiding at Darlingview on the strip along the river there, as to when that process might come to completion.
I'll take that on notice. I know there's been a few landholders that have been holdouts in the agreements when there's been multiple people along the riverfront. I'd have to double check whether that is one of them or not. If it's not, I can give you an update on likely timeframes.
But why would if someone doesn't want it, they don't have to do it, why would that stop the neighbouring properties?
The reason why is actually because it's one parcel, and if one person doesn't want to do it, then we can't subdivide that parcel and give it off, then it'll create a small parcel that we are left with. And it actually is not in line with the Minister's consent that we got some time ago.
Aren't we subdividing individual lots?
We're subdividing to consolidate. So
back to the land, so
correct.
It's still going to be a subdivision, isn't it?
It's a subdivision for the purpose of consolidation.
Yeah, but if you get left with 1 50-metre frontage, isn't that better than getting left with 7 or 8 of them?
Well, I agree, but the way that it's been signed off by the Minister and the way it's all worked out is that if one landholder holds out, then that section of the riverfront can't proceed until they agree or a new landowner comes on board.
I just don't follow that. I mean, the people that own a bit of land in front of their house have been given the opportunity by the council to have that bit of land subdivided and added to their title. So if the bloke next door don't want to do it, that's his problem, not mine, is
No,
it?
I hear what you're saying, but unfortunately, we're hamstrung by what was approved.
Approved by who?
The minister.
Is that challengeable or?
No, if it comes from the minister, not really.
So I think in that case, example up there, there's 7, so if one's held out, no one can do it.
I'm not saying that's the case up there. I'll look into it and see where that one's up to. And if it is one of them, I'll let you know. If it's not one of those ones, I'll let you know what the likely time frame is for it to be.
But what you're saying to me, if one has held out, then no one can do it.
Correct.
Ridiculous.
Can I just ask, just on that point, was it the previous minister or the current minister?
I honestly think it might have been the previous minister, to be honest.
It may well be worth council writing a letter to the current
Would be, I
minister.
would imagine, go and see him.
Better get a letter ready for next Thursday. Councillor Nichols.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think I raised this last time we were here. Has our camper and pet at the rear of the building been moved on, or are we now charging him renting fees? I was going to go.
Further investigation required on both sentiments. Councillor Nichols?
We know he has a daily visit from another place in town.
We're hopeful of that.
Thank you, councillor. Any,
I did-
councillor Elston?
I did have another one. I don't know whether it might be more appropriate and the general manager will tell me to pipe down if that's the case. We're having serious problems, I believe, with the Valuer General's office across the board with various things, in particular Kerwa leases, that in cases in the 5 years from 2017-18 to the last valuation have gone something like 5 times. I know one that went from 80,000 to purchase the freehold to 330. The numbers are coming back at more than what a freehold property adjoining it might, and it just makes absolutely no sense at all. I know council have had some issues that around valuations on land. The examples are just ridiculous. I know some of the Kerwa growers have gone to Helen and Dalton about it. I spoke to Julie Jewell today. They haven't really had any answers back from anyone. But I think it's an issue that perhaps council should buy into, because it's, I'm trying to keep the real estate agent's hat a little bit separate, but it is crucifying those people that want to, well, they can't renew their leases now. The only option they've got after June 30 this year is to freehold, and it'll send them broke. So, ridiculous again.
And where you get the sentiment that I'd tell you to pipe down, Councillor Elstone, quite the opposite. I
thought there may have been a council issue that I shouldn't be speaking about.
No, it's a real issue right across the Shire. I've spoken to a representative of Crown Land last week, and her point of view around valuation for Crown Land and or Kerwa lease. Further to that, I'm expecting a visitation into the area from the VG themselves. So in amongst all that, we've got to continue on with the fight and get a true and accurate representation of what the land value is. Otherwise, settlement for some of the.
I agree, and with the real estate agent's hat on, it's how do you justify an unimproved capital value exactly the same on a freehold bit of land and a leasehold bit of land? There's no justification for the fact it's leasehold. You can answer that.
I am.
Go on.
It wasn't rhetorical at all. You didn't realise that, did you? So when the railway comes from the transcontinental link, it's going to end up at Kurwa, obviously, and the value of that land as the at the end of
nobody
the
explained
rail
that to me,
junction, you
Councillor
see.
McAllister.
You see?
I didn't know the VG had that foresight. But there
All
is
right, riddle solved.
there is some absolute shockers out there. There's just another one is a Western Lands residential lease, acre and a quarter, just vacant land on the Murray, beautiful views. Rent is about $18,000 a year. The cost to freehold is $600,000. I mean, it's what's that person got to sell if he wanted to say, I'll put it on the market for 50 grand, well, who the hell's going to want to buy it and then get 20 grand a year rent on it? It's just crazy.
So how far have these queries gone to at this point? They've gone to...
Well, I know that some of the Kerwell growers, and Councillor Cooper might help me out here, that some of them have sort of tried to have a meeting with Helen Dalton and written to Helen Dalton, and she's gone to the Minister, but hasn't got a response at this point of time. But, council have some issues, and I think in general it's very difficult to stomach when you think that grazing property in the right circle can be freeholded at 3% of the current value. So, you can get 50,000 acres or 30,000 acres valued at, I don't know, $5 million, cost you 150 grand to freehold it. 10 acres of Kerwa cost you 200,000 to freehold it.
And that was an issue of equity to compare with central New South Wales historically. So it seems like the examples you're giving, it's hyper inequitable.
The old Irrigation Act leases sort of have seemed to be forgotten in this whole attitude. And anyway, there's people generally hurting by it, and I think it should be a concern and something that council could buy into.
Perhaps they've promoted the island life too well.
Those bloody real estate agents.
Well, lots of nodding, so I think council will buy in to that. Councillor Cooper? Councillor Crisp? And did I see your... No?
Yes.
Yes.
I just quickly wanted to ask, so the value of general value that they're placing on those property, is that what we rate against?
Generally speaking, it would be a minimum of that, but there is some.
I was going to make a comment previously, but I thought, no, I'll leave it. We've seen that across the board with the property values for our rateable properties. So the last two valuations that we've had, so in 2019 and 2022, the property values across all of our rateable properties that we do rate has gone from something like 600 million to 1.6 billion in 6 years. So there seems to be a fairly consistent theme. So yes, we do use those figures to rate properties, but that's only one of the components that go into how properties are rated. So by the time you throw in together the property values of each individual property within that category that we're rating, what one property at $500,000 worth, one property at $400,000 worth, one property at $1 million, combined with all the other ones within that category, in most cases those increases haven't been too onerous because we're limited, because I suppose we're fortunate that's where rate capping does help us, in that by the time we say, well, we're going to increase that rate category by 3.2%, for example, in this year, it's then that increase is prorated across each of the properties within that category. So it then depends on what increase that each individual property has had. as to then potentially how much. So in some cases there were some properties that went up, but in other cases there was some properties that had rates go down because of how other properties had their increases in rates or increases in property value.
So potentially those landholders in that area could have been hit with increased rates along with the
Potentially,
increase.
I'd have to go in and have a look at each of the individual properties to see how it affected them. Yeah. But just on that though, how they've rated them from a rating perspective compared to how they rate them for, or how they valued them for the purposes that Councillor Elstone's talking about, I'm not sure whether there's a correlation there or whether they use the same parameters or whatnot. So, don't know.
Thank you very much. Something to add, Councillor Crisp? No? All right. Done. I'll now invite Councillor McAllister to move us into confidential, please. Confidential business, adjournment into closed session.
Thank you. I'd like to move that council adjourns into closed session, the recording of the meeting be suspended, members of the press and public be excluded from the closed session, and the recording stopped, paused, and that access to the correspondence and reports relating to the items considered during the course of the closed session be withheld unless declassified by a separate resolution. The reason for the confidentiality is that one has to do with under section 10A2, business relating to D3, information that would reveal is confidential, commercial in confidence. And the second item in that under 10A2, it's not A, there should be another number there. Anyway, it relates to personnel matters concerning particular individuals.
Thank you, Councillor McAllister. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Elstone. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Simon. I'd like to report on 2 items of business discussed in the confidential and closed council business section. The first being late report 12.2, renewal of general manager's contract. I can report that council has determined to authorise the mayor and Mr Anderson from Local Government Management Solutions to enter into contract negotiations to renew the General Manager's contract for a term of 5 years and delegate the Mayor and Deputy Mayor the authority to sign the employment contract of the General Manager. Further, item 12.1, purchase of land 152 Logbridge Road, lot 5202 DP 725295 and lot 5203 DP 725295 at Wentworth. Council has determined to A. Purchase lots 5202 and 5203 DP 725295 or 152 Logbridge Road, Wentworth for the purpose of hosting the light state installation for a purchase price of $850,000. B. Categorise the property as operational land in accordance with Clause 31 of the Local Government Act 1993. C. Borrow $850,000 for the purchase of aforementioned lots from an appropriate lending authority. D. Enter into a lease or licence agreement with Mildura Regional Development for the installation and operation of the fibre optic symphonic orchestra light exhibition. E. Approve the forward payments 2 and 3 for the sums of £75,000 and 175,000 Great British pound paid at the applicable Aussie dollar conversion rate at the date of transaction in accordance with Table 1 to the Bruce Munro Studio. And F. Authorise the Mayor and General Manager to attach the council seal and sign all documentation on behalf of council. And that concludes the business of this evening's meeting, and I can report that the next ordinary meeting of council is Wednesday evening, the 13th of December 2023. Thank you.